among local communities about civilian casualties. Let's listen into the family.
En ningún momento estoy de acuerdo porque si fuese así, como dicen ellos, porque no lo cogieron, o sea, lo cogieron preso o algo, o sea, si es así como las noticias que dicen, ya. Porque o sea, si es así, porque le fueron a arrebatar la vida así como se la arrebataron.
No, me cayó bueno, joder, mal, a todo el mundo, a la mamá, a los hermanos, eso, estamos preocupados por la noticia, sin saber nosotros nada, pues. Supimos por la noticia el bombardeo ese que había por ahí.
Yo últimamente estaba...
Era muy humilde, muy familiar con la gente, era como si fueran familia de él. Tanto él como el papá, la mamá, todos son así.
US President Donald Trump has said that he does not believe that Ukraine can win the war against Russia. While speaking to reporters during Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's visit at the White House, Trump has also noted that Ukraine could still achieve victory, but he personally does not think that they will, emphasizing the unpredictable nature of this war. Additionally, President Trump has commented on the heavy human cost of this conflict, pointing to thousands of soldier casualties that have been occurring weekly in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Let's listen in.
Well, they could. They could still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it. I said they could win. Anything can happen. You know, war is a very strange thing, and it's human lives, but the big number of human lives is soldiers that are being killed in the battlefield, anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000, sometimes more than that every single week. It's not even believable. It's a bloodbath. It's the worst since the Second World War, the worst number of people. And, you know, it doesn't affect us in any way. We don't pay anything because now they pay us for the weapons that they get. The NATO is paying us for the weapons, as you know. It doesn't affect. I guess you could say that's a positive thing. They pay us, but I'm not interested in that. I did straighten it out.
These recent comments come amid Trump's Friday meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, where he called for both Kyiv and Moscow to freeze battle line assaults and halt the enduring war. Despite the tense discussions, Zelensky has described the meeting as positive, even though Ukraine has still not received the Tomahawk missiles that it had requested. Now for this discussion, we welcome Julia Kazdobina. She's a senior fellow at Ukrainian Prism, joins us live from Krakow. Thank you very much, Julia, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, how might this Trump's skepticism about Ukraine's chances affect U.S. foreign policy and other allies' support for the conflict?
Well, I mean, we see President Trump changing his opinions depending on who he talks to last, right? So, and his policy is very unstable and very unpredictable. So I don't think it's going to change the policy of the allies because Russian aggression against Ukraine is a clear threat to European countries, and Russia continues to build up its military industry, and it continues to build up its military presence in the north of the country, in the newly restored Leningrad military district. So Russia continues to try to become a bigger threat to Europe, and it conducts hybrid attacks on European countries, such as sabotage and drone attacks. And there were recent violations, very blatant violations of European airspace when Russian military planes intruded into the Estonian airspace, and they stayed there for about 12 minutes and approached the Estonian capital. So it's a clear and present threat for Europe. So whatever Trump says, it's not going to change Europe's calculus. But the problem is going to remain to keep Trump on board. I mean, he claims that he no longer the U.S. no longer pays for it, and his statements actually make Europeans not so confident what the U.S. is going to do if Russia actually attacks one of the European countries, because NATO is to a large extent dependent on the US role. The US provides some of the crucial capabilities that enable NATO to actually respond to an aggression. So, but so far the war is going on at the Ukrainian territory, and Ukraine is relying more and more on its own ability to keep countering Russian aggression. So we're not sure what's going to happen with the U.S. policy. We're really hopeful that Trump is not going to change it really sharply, but it's definitely not going to affect either European or Ukrainian policy, because Ukraine is fighting an existential war.
And since there are looming topics of upcoming or potential Putin-Trump meeting in Europe, can Trump and Putin summit actually make a difference or make a groundbreaking or contribute to peace in Ukraine? And or does that risk legitimizing Russia's stance on this war?
Well, there's clearly a risk of legitimizing Russia's stance, that's for sure. And Ukrainian government now has a pretty difficult task of because Trump does not look at this war as the previous administration did, differentiating very clearly between the aggressor and the country that was attacked. And so there is a threat of that, but. In my view, it's very unlikely that this summit is going to bring peace closer, because Putin will try to continue to manipulate Trump by giving promises. I mean, we've seen this pattern repeat all over and over again when they talk about something and Trump comes out with some sort of a hopeful statement, and then Russia says, no, our goals in Ukraine have not changed, and they formulate those goals in very vague terms. And so, they then talk about root causes and denazification of Ukraine, which is a total nonsense, because there's Zelensky is clearly not a Nazi, so what is it? What are they talking about? Or demilitarization of Ukraine, which basically means Ukraine's disarmament and leaving Ukraine defenseless is in the face of a possible Russian repeated aggression. So those conditions are definitely not acceptable for Ukraine, because Ukraine is fighting for its survival. And since every single time Russia comes out and says that the conditions didn't change, I don't think it's possible that the summit is going to bring things any closer to peace. They have to change their position, and so far they have not. They continue the aggression, and they continue building up their capabilities, and the Western countries are very slow in trying to limit their ability to continue their aggression.
Thank you very much, Julia, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for Ukraine and Europeans to be included in any discussions about the future of Ukraine, particularly in a potential meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking at a summit in Slovenia, Macron has emphasized that when the fate of Ukraine is on the table, Ukrainians must be present, as should Europeans. Let's listen in.
Sur la rencontre entre le président Trump et le président Poutine, je pense que c'est une très bonne chose que les présidents puissent se rencontrer pour discuter de leur agenda bilatéral. À partir du moment où ils discuteraient de sort de l'Ukraine, les Ukrainiens devraient être autour de la table. À partir du moment où ils devraient discuter de ce qui impacte la sécurité des Européens, les Européens devraient être autour de la table. Nous continuons d'avancer. La seule paix qui peut exister, c'est une paix robuste, durable, qui permet de répondre aux exigences du droit international et qui crée les conditions de sa stabilité.
Meanwhile, Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó has said that European politicians are not interested in whether a US-Russia summit in Budapest could help secure a peace agreement in Ukraine. He has made these comments following a European Foreign Affairs Council meeting in Luxembourg. Let's listen in.
Az európaiak nem arra helyezik a fókuszt, és nem is érdekeltek abban, hogy a budapesti békecsúcs találkozó valóban békét hozzon, és én a mai felszólalásokból arra kell, hogy következtessek, hogy az európai politikusok egy jelentős része nagyon sok mindent, sőt tőlük minden telhetőt meg fognak tenni annak érdekében, hogy megakadályozzák eleve ennek a csúcs találkozónak a létrejöttét. Ahelyett, hogy örülnének, hogy újabb amerikai-orosz csúcs lesz, ahelyett, hogy örülnének annak, hogy egy újabb nagy lépést lehet tenni a béke irányába, mindehelyett az európai politikusok továbbra is a háború folytatását és meghosszabbítását támogatják.
Now we go back to our guest discussion with Julia Kazdobina. She's a senior fellow at Ukrainian Prism, joins us live from Krakow. Thank you very much, Julia, for staying with us. Julia, what are the consequences of these, differing European and U.S. priorities? As we saw yesterday, we saw Lithuanian, I think it was president or a minister talk about their opinion, and then today we see Hungary and Belarus. Yesterday we also saw Belarus voice their opinion, or to try to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. How do you think this all is affecting this conflict?
I mean, when we talk about Belarus, I think it's clear that Belarus is a Russian ally in this war, because Belarusian territory was used in the beginning of the war to launch the attack on Ukraine. And although Lukashenko claims that he was not aware that Putin was going to do this, but in his rhetoric, he has always been supportive of Putin and critical of Ukraine. So he clearly isn't. And also a lot of ammunition that was stored in Belarus from the Soviet times, it was transported to Russia and used in this war. So Belarus has supported Russia in the war. So when we talk about Hungary and the position of Hungary, I mean, we need to understand that Viktor Orban, he's the president of Hungary, right? So he is now facing a re-election, and he's losing popularity, and he's built his politics on anti-Ukrainian rhetoric and anti-European rhetoric. So I would see this position of Hungary as a continuation of that policy. And so it's of course for Europe as a European Union, as an entity that has unanimous decision making, it's very difficult. It's very needle to thread how to deal with Hungary, because it's ruining the unity and makes it very difficult for European Union to conduct a concerted policy. And of course, the key question is whether or not this war can be stopped by negotiations. And although people like Orban claim that there should be negotiations and this is the way to end the war, so far, I mean, starting from the very first days of the war, which was more than 11 years ago, and when Ukraine attempted to negotiate with Russia and achieve some sort of a reasonable solution, it never happened. Russia used different ploys to pretend that it's not a party to the conflict and that it's Ukraine that who's the aggressor and things like that. And so it's complicating things quite a bit. But Ukraine's position is clear that Europeans who were involved in negotiations with Russia during the Minsk phase negotiations, and also were informed about what was happening in the negotiations process after the start of the full-scale invasion. They have now experienced enough of Russian attitudes and Russian behaviors to understand that this could not be resolved without actually building a deterrent. So talking is not going to help it.
Thank you very much, Julia, for sharing that insight and just staying with us throughout this topic. And we stay in this topic. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has strongly condemned any efforts to pressure Ukraine into giving up territory to Russia. Speaking after meeting of EU foreign ministers in Luxembourg, Kallas has emphasized that it was wrong to place the burden on Ukraine to end the war. Let's listen into what she has said.
What we must not forget is that Russia is the aggressor and Ukraine is the victim.